Dear community members, in this week's Parsha, we read about the passing of Sarah Imenu, and at the end of the Parsha, about the passing of Avram Avinu. These were giants, really the beginners of our nation, patriarchs and matriarchs, pillars, and our Parsha speaks about their passing. And yet the Parsha is named Chayei Sarah, the life of Sarah. Because actually, Sarah's life and Avram's life are continuing and are inspiring us and are giving us the kochot all the time. In Motzei Shabbos last week, we heard of the passing of Rabbi Sacks. Rabbi Sacks was definitely a big influencer, an anchor, someone that we could always return to and rely on when we had the honor and pleasure to host him in our synagogue in Mitzpeh Ramot 2.5 years ago. It's interesting to see what Rabbi Sacks writes on our Parsha, Chayei Sarah, the life of Sarah. Naturally, he speaks exactly about these topics, about someone approaching his death and how active he can be or should be in his life. Rabbi Sacks starts his presentation with quoting a certain Lord who was 92 years old, and he was very energetic, and he was asked, why aren't you slowing down? So he said, I'm seeing the door is being closed, and I still have so much to do, so I have to increase my pace. That's how Rabbi Sacks starts, and it's astonishing, that we read this a week after he passed away. Rabbi Sacks points to a very interesting thing in our Parsha. There's a detailed explanation, a detailed description of Avram's buying the field from Ephron, and also of Abraham trying to send Eliezer in order to find a wife for Yitzchak. Yet regarding these two matters, Avram was promised by God. Avram was promised the land, and Avram was promised to have many, many, many children, descendants. And yet still, he's now very old, 137. And what does he see? I have only one son, and I have to beg and to bargain in order to buy a land. But Avram is very active. Avram is doing these things with a lot of passion and extremely active, purchasing the land and then trying that Yitzchak, doing the effort that Yitzchak will find a wife and build a house. We learn from here great lessons, says Rabbi Sacks, that even when God promises us things, we need to help him. We are his partners. It was his intention, God's intention, to leave the room for us in order to help him, to be part of his fulfilling the promises. He won't do it alone. He'll do it only with us. We have to act. And what's most important is that, as Rabbi Sacks says, what changes the world, what fulfills our destiny is not what God does for us, but rather what we do for God. This puts on us a lot of responsibility. And that has to do with another idea of Rabbi Sacks, which I shared with you on Parshat Bereshis when we heard that he was ill. So I quoted him in his shul, in our shul, saying that the biggest thing, the biggest mystery of religion is not how much we believe in God, it's rather how much God believes in us. God believes in us, God never loses hope from us. And therefore God knows, God gives us the role to be his partners and to fulfill his promises, to act, to do for him. Not what God does for us, but rather what we do for God. And we can. That's the point. We can. That's why we're active. And even if we see that the promises, the full fulfillment of the promises is very far. Abraham didn't see the full actualization, how the promises materialize. He had a little land and he didn't have many children. But he did the little steps. He did the beginning. לא עליך המלאכה לגמור, ולא אתה בן חורין להיפטר ממנה. You don't need, you don't think, it's not, it doesn't rest on you to finish the job. Whatever you didn't finish, your son will finish, and your grandson will finish. It's all continuity. But we must start. We must do our actions, do our efforts with a lot of passion, knowing that God believes in us, knowing that we should work here. We are shlichim, we are agents. We should work. We should improve this world for God, just like Abraham did. That's what we learned from this old man, from our patriarch, Avraham Avinu. We should work, we should do, and even if we won't see the full fulfillment, we changed the world, we made the world better, we did something for God. Rabbi Sacks, no doubt, these things that he wrote and inspired us with, he lived through these ideas. He did so much in his life. And despite the fact that we're so sorry that we couldn't have of this more, but we will try now even more to internalize his messages, his lessons, and to understand that just as we saw him so active and so much doing in this world for God, exactly as he says in our Parasha, the question is not what God does for us, but what we do for God. Rabbi Sacks all his life did for God, and this is what we should learn from him. We should work here in this world and improve this world for the glory and for the sake of Hashem. Shabbat Shalom lekulam.